If you are looking for peace in your life, if you want to find guidance from Jesus and live a fulfilling life in faith, then this video is for you. Join us in praying, seeking guidance and unconditional love from Jesus in your life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family to spread the love of Jesus and help those who are looking for peace in their lives.
Finding peace through simple actions. Dear brothers and sisters, as we pause in the silence of this retreat, I invite each of us to reflect on a very simple yet profound image in our journey of faith. It is the image of a person weeding in a Zen garden. This is a task that we may think is very ordinary, nothing special, but if we look at it from a spiritual perspective, we will see that every small action in life, if done with love and mindfulness, can become a holy act, a prayer offered to God. We all know that, in our journey of faith, there are times when we seek peace in God through long hours of prayer, through moments of meditation in church, but there are also times when we must seek peace in the small daily actions of life. In the Zen garden, every time I pull weeds, I am not simply doing a cleaning job, but an opportunity for me to return to myself, to live in the present moment, to do small things with patience and respect. Every blade of grass I pull, every step I take in the garden is a search for peace in my soul, a way for me to feel the presence of God even in the most ordinary tasks of life. Peace in simple actions. Dear brothers and sisters, we can realize that peace does not always come in quiet moments, in moments of prayer in church. Peace sometimes comes in very simple actions, in the tasks that we do every day, such as pulling weeds in the garden, cleaning tables and chairs, or simply doing something with love and attention. Just like in the Zen garden, each blade of grass that grows is a small challenge that we have to face, and each time we pull the grass, we overcome those challenges. But it is in that action that we learn patience, respect for the little things, and through that, we find peace in our souls. For believers, faith is not only expressed through the hours of prayer in church, but also in daily actions. Faith is the way we live, the way we face life and the people around us. When we work, no matter what work it is, if we do it with love and mindfulness, that is faith. When I pull the grass in the Zen garden, I realize that each of those actions can become a meditation, an awakening in the soul. In each small action, I can find the presence of God. Therefore, faith is not just about reading scriptures or praying in church, but about how we live every moment of our lives. Jesus taught us, "Love one another as I have loved you," John 15 verse 12. This teaching is not just an invitation to love one another in happy moments, but an invitation to love in every little action of our lives. When we work, even simple tasks like weeding, washing dishes, or cleaning, if we do it with love and mindfulness, we are showing God's love. And it is in those actions that we find peace in our souls. Be mindful in every action. Dear brothers and sisters, in our daily lives, we often get caught up in worries, work, and concerns. Sometimes, we do things without really paying attention to them, but only out of responsibility or habit. However, if we live our faith fully, we learn to live in awareness, in every moment of our lives. It is in that awareness that we find God, and we find true peace. Mindfulness helps us become more aware of our actions, helps us live fully in the present moment, and finds peace of mind. Every action, no matter how small, when done with love and attention, can become a meditation. In the Zen garden, when I pull weeds, I am not just working to complete a task, but to live in that moment, to feel the presence of God in my action. When I wash a dish, I do not wash it just because it is dirty, but I wash it with respect, with attention and love, because I know that each of these small actions can become a prayer. Faith is vigilance in life. Dear brothers and sisters, faith is not something far away. It is not a vague feeling or an abstract theory. Faith is aliveness, it is the way we live every day. Faith is vigilance in small actions, it is love and patience in every situation. In the Bible, we see that Jesus always invites us to live in vigilance, in a clear awareness of every moment of life. So stay awake, because you do not know on which day it will come. Empty 2400 hours 42. This teaching is not only a reminder to be prepared for the last days, but also an invitation to live in vigilance every day, to live in the present and to love in every action. In every moment of life, we can live our faith, whether it is when we work, pray, or simply when we help others. Every action can become a prayer, an offering to God. When we live in this way, we find peace in our hearts, a peace that does not come from outside, but from a deep connection with God. Small actions and love. Dear brothers and sisters, in the small actions of life, we find God's love. When we work for others, when we help, when we love and forgive, we are living our faith to the full. These actions are not great deeds, but they are deeds that bring peace and closeness to God. Do everything with love. 1 Cor 16:14, Jesus taught us, and it is in love that we find true peace. As in the Zen garden, each weed pulled out is a step in the journey of finding peace, in the journey of faith. Every small action is a step towards the silence of the soul, an offering to God. When we live in mindfulness and love, we will feel the presence of God in everything we do. Dear brothers and sisters, in today's retreat, I invite each of us to pause for a moment to reflect on the small actions in life. Actions that seem unimportant, but are where we can find God. When we live our faith in every moment, in every action, we will feel peace in our hearts and the presence of God in our lives. That is how we live our faith fully, and it is in that liveliness that we will find the peace we seek. Peace in simple actions, the ideal of mindfulness and faith. Dear brothers and sisters, as I shared in the introduction, true peace is not only something we find in moments of prayer in church, but also in the small actions of daily life. We can find God in every moment, in every action, even the smallest. And today, I would like to continue reflecting with you on how to find peace in life through mindfulness and faith, through simple actions, such as weeding in the Zen garden. In the Zen garden, where meditators are quiet and peaceful in their search for insight, every blade of grass, every stone, every wind, and every step can become an opportunity to connect with God. So, when I pull weeds in the Zen garden, I am not just doing a simple task, but entering a sacred space. I realize that every action, no matter how small, can be done in mindfulness, to find the presence of God. And it is in that mindfulness that we find peace. Peace in simple actions. Dear brothers and sisters, sometimes in life we can get caught up in worries, big tasks, and concerns. We seek peace in our hours of prayer, in our services, and in our quiet moments in church. But we also know that peace, important as it is not only found in those quiet moments. Faith is not only about facing God in hours of prayer in church, but also about living in mindfulness every day. As I stood in the Zen garden, slowly and attentively pulling each weed, I felt that this was an opportunity to live my faith in the presence of God. Each weed, each stone in the garden was a test for me to show patience and love. I pulled the weeds not just to clean the garden, but to live in respect for every life, no matter how small. Every action, no matter how simple, can become an offering to God if we do it with love and mindfulness. The Bible teaches us, do everything with love, 1 Cor 16:14. This teaching applies not only to the big actions but also to the small actions of life. Faith is not just the prayers we say in church, but also the actions we do in our daily lives. Every time we do something with love, we are living our faith. And it is in these actions that we find peace and the presence of God. Vigilance and morality in everyday tasks. To live our faith fully, we need to be vigilant in all our actions. Being vigilant does not mean waiting for a special moment, but paying attention to every moment of our lives, knowing that every action can be done with love and respect for God. As Jesus taught in the Bible, watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation, MT 26:41, this invitation is not only to prepare for great challenges but also to be vigilant in the small tasks of everyday life. We often do tasks that we sometimes do not pay attention to, simply to get them done. But when we are vigilant, we do them with attention and love, and then we are living the faith in every moment. Mindfulness is the ability to live in the present, the ability to feel the presence of God in every little thing. And it is in that mindfulness that we find peace in our souls. When I stand in the Zen garden and pull weeds, I do not just rush to get the job done. I pull weeds with attention. Each blade of grass, each stone is part of the journey to find peace in my soul. I do not just pull weeds to get the job done, but to live in that moment, to feel the stillness and serenity that it brings. Faith is to live in such mindfulness, to live in each moment and find the presence of God in it. Patience is the key to peace. To live out our faith fully, we need to be patient. Faith is not an easy journey, and we do not always feel peace in our hearts. But patience and faith is an important key to help us overcome the challenges and difficulties in life. When we are patient in faith, we learn to accept every situation, every challenge that God puts before us, and through that, we find peace. Jesus said in the Bible, "Be patient, for when patience has its perfect work, it will make you mature and perfect." James 1 verse 4. This teaching reminds us that faith is not a smooth road, but a journey full of challenges. It is in these challenges that patience will help us mature in faith and find peace in our hearts. As I weeded the Zen garden, I realized that patience was an important factor in helping me find peace. Weeding was not always easy, and sometimes I felt tired, but I learned that, just like in the journey of faith, every step, however slow, will bring results. Patience helps me see every difficulty in life as an opportunity to grow and improve in faith. Peace comes from living in the present. Dear brothers and sisters, we often get caught up in worries and plans for the future. But faith teaches us that peace does not come from predictions about the future, but from being awake and knowing that every moment is an opportunity to find God. In Zen, we learn that only the present is truly important. When we live in the present, when we live in each moment, we can feel the presence of God in our daily lives. We cannot live in the future, and we cannot change the past, but we can live fully in the present. It is when we live in the present, in every little action, that we find true peace. And it is this peace, through mindfulness and faith, that will lead us on the path of God. Dear brothers and sisters, throughout our journey of faith, we will encounter many challenges, but never forget that peace is not something far away, but something that can be found in every moment of life. It is the small actions, the ordinary tasks of life, if done with love and mindfulness, that can become a meditation, a search for God in everything we do. Today, I invite you to reflect with me on the small actions of life. Let us weed our Zen garden, live in the present, be mindful and loving in every action, for it is in these actions that we will find peace of mind, and through them, we will feel God's presence in our lives. Faith in trials, finding peace through patience. Dear brothers and sisters, as I shared in the introduction, we can find peace in simple daily actions, from weeding in the Zen garden to the small tasks in life. However, I also realize that peace does not always come easily to us, especially in difficult times, when trials and sufferings appear in life. It is at such times that faith and patience become two key elements that help us continue our journey, find peace in our souls and steadfastly follow the Lord. Facing challenges is an indispensable part of every believer's life. Whoever we are, wherever we are, whatever our circumstances, we will all face difficult times, whether it is physical pain, emotional loss, or challenges in our relationships. At such times, we cannot find peace in temporary thoughts or emotions, but need to turn to faith, with patience, to see that every trial can become an opportunity to grow in faith and recognize God's presence in our lives. Patience is the foundation of peace. Dear brothers and sisters, one of the most important things in our journey of faith is patience. We cannot live the faith without patience, because faith is not a smooth road, but a challenging one. The trials we encounter in life will always appear to test our patience and the steadfastness of our faith. We may feel tired, frustrated and want to give up, but it is in these moments that we need to be patient, trust in God and continue on the path He has laid out for us. Patience is one of the important virtues that Jesus taught us through His words and His life. Jesus not only taught us patience, but He also demonstrated it in His actions. He patiently accepted the sufferings and trials that the Father gave Him, even when He faced death on the cross. In the letter to the believers in James, we read, "Be patient in all circumstances." When patience has its full work, it will make you mature and complete, James 1 verse 4. It is in that patience that we find peace in faith. When we face trials, whether physical or mental, what matters is not how quickly or easily we overcome them, but how we persevere and stand firm in our faith. Perseverance helps us see trials as part of God's plan, helps us grow and understand more clearly the unconditional love He has for us. Patience in the face of difficulties. Dear brothers and sisters, when we face difficulties in life, we do not always feel at peace. In fact, life's trials often bring us feelings of insecurity, fear, and disorientation. But when we persevere in faith, we will realize that, even in the most difficult moments, God is always present beside us. Patience and faith does not mean that we do not feel suffering, but that we know that every trial has a purpose, and God will help us overcome it. Jesus did not avoid suffering, and he went through the way of the cross to redeem humanity. Therefore, we can find comfort and peace in our suffering, remembering that Jesus went through great suffering, and he is always with us in the most difficult moments. Faith teaches us that patience in suffering is not a meaningless suffering, but an opportunity for us to grow, to understand more about God's love and Jesus' sacrifice. In every trial, whether it is about health, work, or relationships, we need to be patient and trust in God. This patience helps us realize that we are not alone in our difficulties. Jesus once said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Mt 11:28. When we are patient and entrust ourselves to God, we will find peace in our souls. Finding God in every trial. Dear brothers and sisters, patience and faith is not just about enduring trials, but about finding God in every difficulty, in every trial of life. Every difficulty we face is an opportunity for us to recognize God's presence and to grow in our faith. Jesus taught us, "I am with you always, even in your trials and tribulations." Mt 28:20. When we face suffering, we must not try to avoid it, but learn to see it as part of God's plan of salvation for us. Every trial is an opportunity for us to live our faith more deeply, to learn and to grow. Faith is not just about affirming our belief in God in good times, but about remaining steadfast in our faith even when we are faced with difficulties, trials, and suffering. Peace comes from being patient with yourself. Sometimes, in our journey of faith, we may feel that we are not strong enough, not patient enough with ourselves. We may feel like we are slowing down, unable to overcome challenges, and sometimes, we doubt our own faith. But it is in those moments that we need to remember that God does not expect us to be perfect right away. He loves us even when we are weak, and He is willing to help us through any difficulties. Patience with ourselves is an important part of the journey of faith. We need to accept that we may fail, but the important thing is that we do not give up on the faith. Jesus said, "He who believes to the end will be saved." Matthew 24:13. Patience with ourselves is the realization that even though we may fail, each step in faith is an opportunity for us to grow and become closer to God. Dear brothers and sisters, when we face trials in life, what matters is not how quickly or easily we overcome them, but how we persevere and live our faith in every situation. Patience is the key to finding peace in our souls, and it is in that patience that we can feel God's presence in our lives. Remember, no matter how many trials we face, no matter how tired we feel, we are never alone, because God is always with us, accompanying us on the path of faith. Finding peace through forgiveness and sacrifice. Dear brothers and sisters, We have reflected together on patience and faith and how patience can help us overcome life's challenges and find peace of mind. However, faith is not only about persevering in difficult times, but also about living in love and forgiveness, especially when we face hurt, failure or conflicts in relationships. Forgiveness and sacrifice are not only important virtues in faith but also factors that help us find peace of mind when we know how to forgive others and sacrifice for love. We have learned that, in the journey of faith, challenges and difficulties are indispensable. But it is important that we accept trials as part of God's plan, and find strength in patience and faith. However, simple patience is not always enough to find peace. Sometimes we need something deeper, something that can help us overcome the wounds in our hearts: forgiveness and sacrifice. Forgiveness, a call from faith. Dear brothers and sisters, when we think of forgiveness, many of us may immediately think of forgiving others when they have hurt us. Forgiveness can be a difficult act, especially when we feel hurt, deceived, or treated unfairly. However, faith teaches us that forgiveness is not just an act we do for others, but a liberation for ourselves. Forgiveness is a way for us to free our hearts from resentment, anger, and hatred. Jesus taught us, "If you do not forgive others, your Father will not forgive you." Matthew 6:15. This teaching is an invitation not only to forgive others but also to free ourselves from suffering and resentment. When we forgive, we do it not only for the person who has hurt us, but for ourselves, so that our hearts can be light and at peace. Forgiveness does not mean that we forget what happened, but that we decide not to let that hurt control our lives anymore. Forgiveness is the way to live faith. Dear brothers and sisters, in our daily lives, we often encounter situations that make us feel hurt. Insensitive words, disrespectful actions, or even betrayal can make us feel hurt and difficult to forgive. However, Jesus teaches us to love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, Matthew 5:44. This is a profound call to forgiveness and unconditional love, not only for our loved ones but also for those who may have hurt us. Faith is not just about believing in God, but also about living according to His teachings, especially in difficult times. Forgiveness is an integral part of the journey of faith. When we forgive others, we are not only living according to God's teachings, but also a way to cleanse our hearts, to find peace within. Forgiveness helps us to no longer be bound by negative emotions such as anger and hatred. It helps us move on, opening ourselves to the love and peace that God offers. Sacrifice and love, the path to peace. Dear brothers and sisters, in the journey of faith, there is not only forgiveness, but also sacrifice. Sacrifice is not just giving away what we have, but offering the important things in life to God and to those around us. Faith teaches us that we cannot live for ourselves, but must live for others, for the community, for those we love. Jesus lived and died for us. He sacrificed himself on the cross to redeem humanity. It is in that sacrifice that Jesus left us a priceless lesson about love and peace. He taught us about love not only in his words, but also in his acts of sacrifice. When we live our faith in sacrifice, we not only find peace for ourselves, but also contribute to bringing peace to those around us. Sacrifice is part of love. When we sacrifice for others, whether in small or big ways, we are showing God's love in our lives. True love is not about loving in good times, but loving in bad times, when we have to sacrifice ourselves for others. Jesus showed this when he taught us not only to love each other but also to love our enemies, to love those who hurt us. Sacrifice in everyday life. Dear brothers and sisters, sacrifice is not just about great acts, but about small, simple acts in everyday life. Every time we take time to help others, every time we do something with love, every time we forgive someone who has hurt us, we are performing an act of sacrifice. Sacrifice is not about big sacrifices but about giving the little things in life to others and to God. Faith is not just words or abstract beliefs, but concrete actions in life. When we help others, when we sacrifice our time, our efforts, and what we have to help those in need, we are living our faith. Faith is not just about praying in church, but about loving and sacrificing at all times and in all places. It is in these acts of sacrifice that we find peace of mind and connection with God. Sacrifice leads to peace and reconciliation. When we live our faith through sacrifice, we find peace. Peace is not something that comes from outside, but something we find within ourselves when we live in love and sacrifice. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Matthew 5:9. When we sacrifice for others, we make this world more peaceful, and it is in that peace that we find true peace. Dear brothers and sisters, when we live our faith through forgiveness and sacrifice, we not only find peace for ourselves but also bring peace to those around us. Peace is not something we can find in material things or in moments of comfort, but something we find in love and sacrifice. It is in small acts, in forgiveness and sacrifice for others, that we find the true peace that God wants to give us. Dear brothers and sisters, faith is a journey that cannot be without forgiveness and sacrifice. Forgiveness and sacrifice help us to live our faith not only in words but also in loving actions in life. When we forgive those who have hurt us, when we sacrifice for others, we not only live our faith fully but also find peace in our hearts. Let us live our faith in forgiveness and sacrifice, to find the peace that God promises to give to each of us. Trust and surrender, the way to peace. Dear brothers and sisters, in the previous sections, we have reflected together on patience, forgiveness, and sacrifice, important elements that help us find peace of mind and live our faith fully. However, there is another element that is equally important, and without it, it will be difficult to find true peace in life. That is trust and surrender to God. At every stage of our journey of faith, we need to trust in God, that He always has a good plan for us, and that He will lead us through every trial and difficulty. Trusting in God is not an easy thing, especially when we are faced with difficult circumstances. At times like these, doubt, worry and fear can rob us of our peace, leaving us feeling confused and weary. However, when we entrust everything to God, when we trust that He will always accompany us and guide us through our trials, we will find the peace we are looking for. Trust in God, peace of mind. Dear brothers and sisters, trust in God is the foundation of peace of mind. When we put our trust in God, when we believe that He has a good plan for our lives, we will find peace of mind. We no longer worry about the future, no longer doubt what will come, because we know that God has everything in His hands. Jesus taught us this trust in the Sermon on the Mount. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough worries of its own. Ms. 6:34. This teaching is not just a simple exhortation, but an invitation to live in peace, by trusting in God and entrusting all our worries and difficulties to Him. Faith teaches us that, despite the trials and difficulties in life, we need not worry, because God is always with us and will guide us. We can understand this teaching as an invitation to live in serenity, so as not to get caught up in the worries of life. Instead of worrying about the future, instead of being afraid of the unknown, we are invited to entrust everything to God, trusting that He will take care of everything for us. When we trust in God, we not only find peace in our hearts but also feel His closeness in every circumstance of our lives. Entrusting everything to God. Dear brothers and sisters, one of the important things in the journey of faith is learning to entrust everything to God. Entrusting does not mean that we ignore our responsibilities or do nothing, but that we realize that, no matter how hard we try, there are things beyond our control. Entrusting to God is trusting that He will lead us through trials, help us face difficulties and lead us to true peace. In the Bible, we see many people who entrusted their lives to God and found peace in it. One of the most beautiful images is when Mary, in her Magnificat prayer, says, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior." Luke 1 verses 46 to 47. Mary entrusted her life to God, and in doing so, she found peace in her heart, even in the face of many difficulties and challenges. We too are called to entrust our worries, our fears, and our trials to God. When we entrust everything to God, we not only free ourselves from anxiety, but we also open ourselves to Him to work in our lives. Entrusting is an act of faith, believing that God always knows what is best for us and will lead us to a good outcome, even in difficult times. Peace in trusting in God's providence. Dear brothers and sisters, an important element in finding peace is trust in God's providence. God's providence is not something far away, but a constant presence in our lives. God is always with us, guiding us in every situation, and caring for us as His beloved children. Jesus' teaching in the Bible about God's providence is a powerful reminder for us. Do not worry about your life, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Psalm 6:25. This is an invitation to trust that God will take care of everything for us, and that we do not need to worry about things that are beyond our control. God's providence is an integral part of the life of faith. When we trust in God's providence, we feel peace in our hearts, because we know that God is always with us and will guide us through every difficulty. We do not need to be afraid or worried, because God always takes care of us, just like a father takes care of his children. Faith is the way to find peace. Dear brothers and sisters, faith is not something that can only be felt in quiet moments or in hours of prayer. Faith is a living thing, a journey that we go through every day. To live faith, we need not only to believe in God, but also to entrust our lives to Him, believing that He will guide us in every situation. When we trust in God and entrust everything to Him, we find peace not only in moments of prayer, but in every step of our lives. Faith is knowing that every trial has a purpose, and that God will always lead us to peace. It is in surrendering and trusting in God that we find peace of mind and freedom in life. Dear brothers and sisters, to find peace in life, we need to live in trust and entrust everything to God. We do not always understand His plans, but we are called to trust in His providence, to entrust all our worries, all our difficulties and all our trials to Him. When we do so, we will find true peace, the peace that only God can give us. Live faith in trust and surrender, and we will feel God's presence in every moment of our lives, leading us to peace and happiness. Silence and serenity, the way to peace. Dear brothers and sisters, in the previous sections, we have reflected together on patience, forgiveness, sacrifice and trust in God as factors that help us find peace in life. However, there is another factor that is no less important, which is silence and serenity of the soul. When we live in silence, we not only find peace, but also deepen and perfect our faith. It is in silence that we can feel God's presence and listen to His call, and at the same time, we also realize that true peace only comes when our souls are calm and clear. In modern life, We are often caught up in the hustle and bustle of life, worries about work, family, and society. Pressure from work, relationships, and society can make us feel tired, anxious, and lacking peace of mind. However, Jesus taught us that to find true peace, we need to seek the stillness and serenity of our souls. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Mt 11:28. This invitation from the Lord is not only a comfort but also a powerful encouragement, reminding us that only when we find stillness can we truly rest and find the peace we long for. Silence and serenity in the life of faith. Dear brothers and sisters, silence and serenity are not something we can find out there, in material things or in personal achievements. Silence and serenity come from within our own hearts. We need to stop, listen to ourselves and listen to God in those quiet moments. Jesus spent a lot of time in his life praying and being quiet. He often left the crowds and went to lonely places to pray, to connect with the Father and find peace in his heart. We are also called to do the same in our lives. In quiet moments, we can find the peace that God wants to give us. When we take time to pray, to meditate on God's Word, we not only find peace in our hearts, but also open ourselves to receive God's love. These moments of silence not only help us feel God's presence, but also help us purify our hearts, free ourselves from worries and troubles, so that our souls become pure and clear. Peace in the silence of prayer. Dear brothers and sisters, prayer is an important means to help us find peace in our hearts. Every prayer we say, every time we sit quietly in God's presence is an opportunity for us to find peace. But the important thing is that we pray not only with our words, but also with our hearts. Prayer is not just talking to God, but listening to Him, opening our hearts to receive the peace that He wants to give us. We can learn from the prayers of Jesus. In the Bible, we see Him praying in times of trial and suffering. When He faced His agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, He prayed to His Father, not just to ask for something for Himself, but to find comfort and peace in surrendering to God. My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Mt 26:39. Through these prayers, we see that prayer is not just about asking for something, but also about entrusting everything to God and finding peace in that surrender. Silence helps us listen to God. Dear brothers and sisters, when we seek silence in our lives, we are not only seeking rest or comfort, but also an opportunity to listen to God. God is always speaking to us, but sometimes we cannot hear because life is too noisy and rushed. We need to stop, find a quiet space to open our hearts and listen to Him. It is in these moments that God will give us the guidance, the comfort, and the advice necessary for life. Silence helps us listen not only to God's words but also to the urgings of our hearts. We often feel anxious about the future, about the unknown. However, when we live in silence, we will realize that peace does not come from controlling everything, but from trusting in God and letting Him lead us. It is in silence that we can feel the gentle voice of God in our lives, guiding us through trials and anxieties. Silence and peace in our relationship with God. Dear brothers and sisters, every relationship in life needs care and nurturing. The love and connection in our relationship with God is no exception. To maintain this relationship, we need silence, so that we can feel His presence, so that we can find peace in our hearts. Just like a relationship between two people, when we do not spend time together, do not listen and share, the relationship will gradually become distant. The same is true of our relationship with God. If we do not spend time praying, to seek silence in our hearts, our relationship with God will gradually fade and lack connection. Silence not only helps us maintain our relationship with God, but also helps us live fully in His love. When we find silence in our hearts, we also find the peace and love that God wants to give us. Silence is a space for us to listen to God, to understand more clearly His unconditional love for us, and to live in the peace that only He can give. To live in silence, we must learn to let go. Dear brothers and sisters, living in silence is not easy, especially in a world full of distractions. To live in silence, we must learn to let go of unnecessary things, to let go of worries and concerns that do not help us grow in faith. Jesus invites us, "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me." And 16:24. To live in silence, we need to give up external noise, unnecessary worries, and turn our hearts towards God. Only in that renunciation can we find true peace. Dear brothers and sisters, silence and serenity are important elements that help us find peace in faith. When we live in silence, we not only find peace in our hearts but also find the presence of God, hear His voice leading us through all trials. We are called to live our faith in silence, to entrust all our worries to God and live in the peace He gives. Let us seek silence, let us live in the serenity of our hearts, and through this, we will find the true peace that God promises to give to each of us. Living faith through concrete actions, the path to peace. Dear brothers and sisters, before entering the final part of the journey of faith that we are going through together, I would like to invite each of us to reflect on something very important: the connection between faith and concrete actions in daily life. In the previous sections, we have learned about patience, forgiveness, sacrifice, trust and silence. All of these are not just theories, but elements that we need to practice in our lives in order to find true peace. Faith is not something distant, but something lived out in concrete actions, in which we show love, patience, forgiveness and trust in God in every moment of our lives. Faith is not an impromptu action, but an attitude. When we live our faith, we believe in God not only in words but also in concrete actions. Every action, no matter how small, can be an expression of faith. We can work, pray, help others, or even face life's challenges, all of which can be actions that express our faith. Living the life of faith through practical actions. Dear brothers and sisters, sometimes we may feel that faith is something that only exists in hours of prayer, in ceremonies, or in quiet moments of spiritual life. However, true faith is expressed through concrete actions in everyday life. It is in the small things, such as helping others, spending time with family, or being responsible in our work and community, that we truly demonstrate the faith we believe in. In his letter to the James believers, St. James writes, "Faith without works is dead," James 2 verse 26. This reminder shows us that faith is not just a belief in the heart, but is expressed in concrete actions. These actions can be as simple as helping a friend in need, taking time to pray for someone, or living an honest and responsible life. Each of these actions is a way of expressing faith, a way of living in God's love and witnessing to that love in this world. Peace in every act of love. Dear brothers and sisters, when we live our faith through acts of love, we find peace in our hearts. We cannot find peace if we keep our faith in our hearts without putting it into practice in our lives. Faith is not something isolated, only in the heart, but something that is alive in every action. We are called to live our faith not only in words but also in deeds. Jesus taught us, "Love one another as I have loved you," John 15 verse 12. This is not just an invitation but a concrete instruction for our lives. Faith is shown through the love we have for one another, through the help we give to others, through the forgiveness and patience we show in our relationships. When we live our faith through love, we will feel peace in our hearts, because love is the source of peace. We also need to remember that love is not just a feeling, but a concrete action. When we help a friend in need, when we spend time with our family, when we live an honest and responsible life, all of these actions are expressions of the love that God has for us. When we live like this, we will feel peace in our hearts, because love always brings peace. Facing trials, living faith through difficulties. Dear brothers and sisters, living faith does not mean that we will not encounter trials or difficulties. Faith is not a protection from pain or hardship, but the strength to face trials and overcome them in peace. Peace is not something that comes from avoiding difficulties, but from facing difficulties with trust in God. Jesus did not avoid suffering, but he faced it with fortitude and love. On the cross, he showed the greatest love when he forgave those who harmed him. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23 verse 34. Jesus taught us not only about love in good times, but also in the most painful moments. He calls us to live our faith in all circumstances, not just when things are going well, but when we are faced with trials and difficulties. When we encounter difficulties in life, the important thing is not to try to avoid them, but to find ways to live our faith through those challenges. Every challenge, whether it is about health, family, or work, can become an opportunity for us to live our faith, to show love and forgiveness, and through that, to find peace in our hearts. Faith through patience and forgiveness. Dear brothers and sisters, in our journey of faith, patience and forgiveness are necessary virtues for us to truly show love and peace. When we are patient in trials, when we forgive those who have hurt us, we not only live our faith but also live in peace. Faith is trusting in God, that He will help us overcome all challenges, that He will help us find peace in our suffering. Patience and forgiveness are necessary actions for us to live our faith every day. When difficulties come, we may feel tired and frustrated, but when we are patient and forgiving, we not only find peace in our hearts but also make our faith stronger. Faith is not a steadfastness in easy times, but the ability to keep the faith when faced with challenges. Peace in every little action. Dear brothers and sisters, our daily lives may be filled with seemingly small and unimportant actions. However, every action, no matter how small, can become an act of faith. When we work with love, when we help others, when we live honestly and responsibly, all these actions are actions that express faith. Faith is not a vague belief but a living reality in concrete actions. Remember that peace does not come from the great things we do, but from the small actions we perform with love and trust in God. When we live our faith in every moment of our lives, we not only find peace for ourselves but also bring peace to those around us. Dear brothers and sisters, living the faith is not just words, but concrete actions in daily life. Every action, even the smallest one, can be an expression of faith, of love for God and for our brothers and sisters around us. When we live our faith through patience, forgiveness, love and responsibility, we find peace not only in our hearts but also in every circumstance of our lives. Let us live our faith every day through our actions, because it is in those actions that we will find the true peace that God wants to give to each of us.